When we think of serial killers or murderers, we usually picture a localized threat, a crime of passion, a robbery gone wrong, or a predator hunting in their own backyard. But what happens when the killer is a highly trained military veteran, radicalized by foreign wars, operating on a global scale? This is Craig Austin Lang, a former United States Army soldier who took his skills overseas to fight as a mercenary. He traversed continents, joining paramilitary groups in Eastern Europe and attempting to embed himself in conflicts in Africa. But his most brutal act wasn't committed on a foreign battlefield. It happened in a quiet, abandoned parking lot in Estero, Florida. The victims, Danny and Deana Lorenzo, a couple from Brooksville, Florida, who thought they were making a routine legal firearms purchase. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush meticulously planned by two radicalized soldiers desperate to fund their next war. This case has everything: international manhunts, the violation of the U.S. Neutrality Act, passport fraud, and a shocking double homicide. This is the story of the Mercenary murders. To understand how a domestic double homicide connects to a global mercenary ring, we have to start with Craig Austin Lang. Lang wasn't just playing dress-up. He was the real deal. He enlisted in the United States Army, serving tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. But his military career ended abruptly. In 2014, Lang was dishonorably discharged. The structure and purpose he found in the US military were gone, but his desire for combat remained. In 2015, Lang found a new war. He traveled to Ukraine, which was deeply embroiled in the Donbass conflict against Russian-backed separatists. But Lang didn't join the official Ukrainian armed forces. Instead, he joined a far-right, ultra-nationalist volunteer paramilitary group known as the Right Sector. It was here, in the freezing trenches of Eastern Europe, that Lang met another American, Alex Jared Zwiefelhofer. Zwiefelhofer, from Wisconsin, was also a former U.S. Army soldier. The two men bonded over their shared military background and their insatiable appetite for combat. They weren't fighting for ideology. They were fighting for the sake of fighting. By 2017, the combat in Ukraine was stalling. Lang and Zwiefelhofer got bored. They packed up and flew to Kenya, attempting to cross into South Sudan to join the Sudan People's Liberation Army. But authorities intercepted them. They were detained in Kenya and eventually deported back to the United States. Back on American soil, the two men felt trapped. They needed a new battlefield, and they set their sights on South America. Their new grand plan? Travel to Venezuela, join a paramilitary resistance group, and help overthrow the government of Nicolas Maduro. But international mercenary work is expensive. They needed weapons, they needed body armor, and most importantly, they needed cash. By early 2018, Lang and Zwiefelhofer were communicating on Facebook Messenger, mapping out their Venezuela plot. According to FBI affidavits, their messages discuss buying body armor, stealing boats, smuggling weapons, and committing robberies. To get the quick cash they needed to leave the country, they devised a lethal scheme. They went on a website called Arms List, essentially an online classifieds board for firearms, and posted several high-end guns for sale. Enter Serafin Danny Lorenzo Jr. and his wife Deana. Danny was 53, Deana was 51. They lived in Brooksville, Florida, and were avid firearm enthusiasts. They saw the listing and reached out to the sellers. They agreed on a price, $3,000 in cash. The sellers told the Lorenzos to meet them in the parking lot of a business complex off Corkscrew Road in Estero, Florida. It was a 2.5-hour drive south for the couple. April 10th, 2018. Danny and Deana arrive at the designated location. It's quiet, empty. They have the $3,000 in cash ready. They thought they were meeting a fellow gun enthusiast. Instead, they were meeting two trained combat veterans who had already decided the Lorenzos weren't going to leave that parking lot alive. As soon as the transaction began, the trap was sprung. Lang and Zwiefelhofer ambushed the couple. Danny and Deana were shot multiple times in the head and body. It was an execution. The two mercenaries took the $3,000 in cash, left the bodies of the Lorenzos bleeding out in the Florida heat, and vanished. With $3,000 in their pockets, the clock was ticking. They knew it wouldn't be long before the bodies were discovered, and the digital trail of the arms list emails and Facebook messages pointed straight to them. While Zwiefelhofer eventually traveled to Wisconsin, where he would later be arrested, Lang knew he had to get out of the United States. Federal indictments detail Lang's desperate scramble. He fled to North Carolina. There, he met up with an associate and traded a military smoke grenade, several firearms, and $1,500 in cash in exchange for the man's personal identity documents. Lang used those stolen documents to apply for a US passport under an assumed name. Within days, Lang and another co-conspirator bought airline tickets out of the US, bouncing from Georgia to New York, and eventually fleeing to Bogota, Colombia. From Colombia, he traveled to Spain, and eventually he made his way back to the one place he felt safe, the war zones of Ukraine. By late 2018, social media posts confirmed Lang was back on the front lines in Eastern Europe. But the FBI wasn't letting this go. The Lee County Sheriff's Office in Florida had processed the brutal crime scene, and the Department of Justice began building a massive federal case. Because Lang and Zwiefelhofer had planned this to fund an illegal paramilitary operation in Venezuela, they weren't just looking at state murder charges. They were charged with conspiracy to commit robbery, discharging a firearm resulting in death, and violating the Neutrality Act, a federal law that prohibits American citizens from waging war against countries at peace with the United States. The Justice Department wanted Craig Lang back, but getting an American citizen extradited out of a country actively fighting a war with Russia is no easy task. Lang fought his extradition tooth and nail. He married a Ukrainian woman, had a child, and argued in the European Court of Human Rights that sending him back to the United States would violate his rights. He managed to delay the process for years, living as a free man in Kiev while the Lorenzo family grieved in Florida. But the law caught up to his co-conspirator first. In 2024, Alex Zwiefelhofer stood trial. A federal jury convicted him on all charges, and he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences in federal prison. Finally, the European Court rejected Lang's appeals. The DOJ's Office of International Affairs successfully secured his extradition. In mid-2024, the FBI flew to Ukraine, placed Craig Austin Lang in handcuffs, and brought him back to American soil. The trial was airtight. Prosecutors presented the digital footprint, the Facebook messages plotting the crime, the fraudulent passport applications, and the forensic evidence from the Estero parking lot. The defense tried to argue that Lang's actions were somehow a result of his military service, but the jury saw it for what it was: a cold-blooded assassination for cash. On September 15, 2025, a federal jury found Craig Austin Lang guilty of all charges. United States District Judge Sherry Polster Chappelle handed down the ultimate punishment: consecutive life sentences in federal prison. He was also ordered to pay restitution to the Lorenzo family. There is no parole in the federal system. The man who traveled the globe looking for a war will spend the rest of his life in a concrete box. Lang and Zwiefelhofer were highly trained military veterans who became addicted to the chaos of war and failed to reintegrate into civilian life. Desperate to fund a trip to Venezuela to continue fighting, they resorted to lethal violence on US soil. Danny and Deana Lorenzo, an innocent couple attempting to make a routine weekend purchase, were ruthlessly killed by the two men. The tragic event highlights how the perpetrators abandoned their humanity, treating civilian robbery targets like enemy combatants to finance their obsession with war. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more deep dives into complex, underreported federal cases like this one, hit the like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below. Does the federal government need to do more to track rogue veterans who leave the US to fight in foreign militias? Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.